G'day everyone, I'm an opinionated organism. When I'm out talking to people about politics, I find a lot of people don't understand how the preferential voting system works in Australia. They say things like, who do they send their preferences to? Or, they can't form government, it's just a wasted vote. They think that if they vote for a minor party, then that minor party will just give their vote to one of the two major parties, or that the people counting stop counting your ballot if your number one doesn't win. Fortunately, that's not how it works. The short answer is, you choose your preferences. Their how to vote card is just a suggestion based on some deals they made to not compete with other parties. So what's the long answer, you didn't ask? The first Australian federal election was in 1901, and we are getting ready for the 48th. Labor have contested every election and won 15 of them. The Liberal National Coalition have contested 30 and has won 19 of them. When voting for the House of Representatives, we are voting for a single person to represent our electorate in the Parliament of Australia. This person then tries to form a majority group out of 151 in the House of Representatives, which is why almost all of them join groups that we call parties. The majority party holds government and chooses the Prime Minister. We are given a small piece of paper. We need to number every box for a formal vote. Put a 1 in the box next to the candidate you want to win the most. Put a 2 in the box next to the candidate you want to win the second most. Keep going until you run out of boxes. Wearing thongs and a singlet while you vote does not make your vote an informal vote. If you can identify the person who voted by the ballot, it is informal. If you don't fully complete the ballot, it is informal. If you incorrectly complete the ballot, it is informal. If you write a manifesto on the ballot, it is informal. If you draw a picture on the ballot, it is informal. Informal votes do not get used toward vote counts. Currently, 5% of voters vote this way. This is higher than some candidates get, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. For some exciting voters, the last numbers are as important as the first numbers. I'll explain why in a bit, but first, let's address the donkey in the room. If you vote top down, 1, 2, 3, etc., in the order printed on the ballot, we call that a donkey vote. We count those as formal votes, just in case you actually do want to vote like that. But you probably don't want to vote like that, you just don't care, and you would be better off drawing a picture of a suggestive bowl of vegetables. It would more accurately reflect your voting interest. Now we both know you didn't click on this video for ass and eggplants, so let's move on to boring voters. A boring voter is when the vote is a 1 to the incumbent safe major party. Let's just add one more to the leading scorer again, the predicted vote, a quick count, and the expected outcome. Another career politician in a navy blue suit. Boring. Exciting voters vote for all the minor parties and leave the majors for last. We have to count those over and over again. Real popcorn stuff. When we count the votes, we first only use the ones. If a candidate gets over 50% of ones, they win. It's all over by 10 PM, almost everybody is sober, hardly anyone is crying, let's do it all again in 3 years. Boring. If no candidate gets over 50%, put the kettle on. The candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated from the count. All of the ballots that were number 1 for that candidate now use their second preference, and we add those to the totals. If we still have no candidate over 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated from the count, and those votes are then added to the next candidate preference on those ballots. So if you voted number 1 for that candidate, your second preference is now getting used. And if they were already your second preference, now your third preference is getting used. If we still don't have a winning candidate, we keep doing it until someone has over 50% of the votes. It takes all night, beverages get consumed, teeth get gnashed, speeches get made, and for some, dreams get dashed. Fear not though, because we'll do it all again in 3 years. I love it. In the Senate election, each territory elects 2 senators to a single term, and each state elects 6 senators to a double term. Senators do not form government. We get handed a tablecloth-sized piece of paper many times wider than the voting booth, and are encouragingly reminded that if we make a mistake, we can get a replacement. There are two ways to vote on the Senate ballot: above the line and below the line. If you vote above the line, you must number 6 or more boxes, and you are voting for the entire group below that box in the order they come on the ballot before anyone in the next group you have numbered on the ballot. If you vote below the line, you must number 12 or more boxes. The reason for voting below the line is so you can put your preferences in a different order to the party set order. The quota for a Senate seat is the number of formal votes divided by the number of vacancies plus 1. We count all the first preference votes. When someone reaches a quota, they get the seat, and all votes they have above the quota get transferred to the rest of the candidates at a transfer rate of surplus votes divided by total first preference votes. The second preference after this candidate on every ballot get totaled, then multiplied by the transfer rate and added to the first preference totals for each candidate. This is repeated for every candidate that reaches the quota. If any seats remain vacant but there are no surplus votes left to use, the candidate with the least votes is eliminated, and the next preference of those votes are added at full value to the remaining candidates' total. This process is repeated until all seats have been filled. This process can take weeks. Next, we need to talk about funding. Not mine, don't worry. This isn't an ad read. I'm talking about electoral funding. This is really important stuff. Put as simply as I can, once a candidate or group gets over 4% of the total first preference votes, they get paid for every first preference vote they receive, even if they come last. This is why the major parties are in no rush to educate us on how preferential voting works. They want you to think you must vote for them as a first preference, so the other major party that you despise doesn't get in. What they are actually doing is making sure they get your first preference so they get paid for it. So with all that said, how do you vote in the Australian federal election of 2025? Well, if you are boring and just want the same boring show for 3 more years, vote for the leading scorer and put the second leading scorer as your second preference. The rest of the numbers won't matter in this instance. If you are disgruntled but still boring and want the other boring show for 3 years, vote for the second leading scorer and put the leading scorer as your second preference. The rest of the numbers won't matter in this instance. If your favourite party is imploding before your eyes with factional disputes and you don't like one of the candidates in the Senate list, vote below the line and skip that candidate. The count will reflect that choice. If you think that a party is terrible, but they have that one young senator you would simp for just so they're on the news more often, vote below the line and give them your first preference, then ignore the rest of their terrible party and vote for other people. If you wished your favourite major party would do something on this single issue that they ignore, vote for the minor party campaigning on that issue with your first preference, then vote for the major party you like second. If you are exciting and want change, vote for your favourite minor party first, then all the other minor parties next, leaving the major parties for the end. And this is where the last numbers matter. When all else fails, it could come down to this. Whoever you hate most, put them last. And last of all, if you hate all of them and want a none of the above option, we have informal voting. Draw an eggplant, write your manifesto, put a 0 in every box. Have fun with it. Just be polite to the volunteers. We count these votes, and no one gets paid for your first preference. If this number grows, every party will try to do more to get that number to go down. That means making more of us happy. And that's how to vote in the 2025 Australian federal election. If you want to know who to vote for, I can recommend a great option, but that is a different video for another time. I'm an opinionated organism. Thank you for your time today.